Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to introduce a couple of pieces that might help you with this project. You want to use some kind of tripod and mount your camera to that so you have stability for your project. And also, if you want to use your cell phone, you can. I have this other product here. Well, you can also buy a bracket here for your tripod here, and your phone sits inside this bracket here. This one's by a company called Joby. The other one I think that's really cool is you can get one of these little tiny tripod stands. And again, it has the cell phone mount there, so you can take your phone and you can just mount it right into this thing. And with something like this, you could just shoot it from your camera pointing at you. You could shoot it yourself, and this would sit on the desk here and never move. So something like that, like a Joby product. I'm not a spokesperson for Joby, but that's the only brand I've bought. Or something like a tripod, with a cell phone mount, or you can just use a regular camera mount and mount your camcorder on there. But that'll give you stability, and it'll make your video flow much better and look more consistent. So give it a try. If you decide you want to work alone, you can use something like a tripod or a desk tripod mount and use your cell phone too. The assignment was to shoot about 40 to 50 still frames of you performing some kind of task. And again, this might have required you to work with one other person if you were using a phone or a camera and a tripod, so they could shoot the pictures while you're performing the task, one frame at a time. So here are my pictures. I put them in a folder as we talked about in class. And what I'm going to do is just preview the stop motion here, preview all the frames as if they play out as a movie. So I'm going to click on the first frame and highlight it. I'm going to scroll down to the last frame, hold down Shift, and select all of them. Okay, once they're all selected, now I can go up to the top where it says Picture Tools, click on Slideshow, and what I'm going to do is play it without holding the down button on my keyboard, and watch how slow it plays. And so you can see here it's just going like at a snail's pace. But if you click the down arrow on your computer keyboard, the down arrow will speed it up, and you can watch it in what looks like almost real time, right? And so there you can see, now you can see it in closer to real time how it would look. And you can see here that I messed up. I took my glasses off at the end. However, I think that's acceptable. I think I can use this footage. So now that I've looked at or previewed my footage, now I'm going to need to get it into After Effects. So what I'm going to do is close this. I'm going to go down to the bottom of my screen. I've pinned the Adobe Creative Suite here, or the Creative Cloud, that I've subscribed to the bottom of my screen here. So the taskbar, I've pinned it. I'm going to go to After Effects here. Go ahead and open that. Takes a second here. Okay, and then what you're going to see is a screen that looks like this, maybe, where you're going to have a tab where it says New Project, or you can open a previous project that you've saved. We're going to click on New Project, and then you're going to see this. This here on the left here is this is your project window, where you're going to see all your raw clips that you've imported. The window here in the center in the top, that's your monitor window or your screen. That's where you're going to see your footage. Upper right are some other controls, especially your preview controls, which you'll be using. So if you click that preview button, you'll see your play controls. Notice here they're grayed out. That's because we don't have any footage to play yet. Okay? And then down below on the bottom here, you'll see your timeline. That's where you're going to see your clips playing in real time. And you'll see the play bar going across. Okay, so the first thing we want to do once we open this up is we're going to create a new composition. So we're going to click New Composition here. You can leave the composition name as Comp1 for now. That's fine. For our preset, you want to select Custom. For our width and height, we're going to use 640 by 480. Probably when you come into this, you'll probably have something set like NTSC-DV or maybe even widescreen set up. And you might have some different numbers here. Let's say it looks like that. So you'll switch to custom if it's not set up to custom already. And then here, when you change the numbers to 640 by 480, watch what happens when I grab this. I left click the mouse button, drag to the left. I can bring it down to 640 just by dragging the mouse. But notice here when I do that, it's changing the height as well. So once I get to 640, I can't change this to 480. If I try to change this to 480, it's going to change the width, right? That's because it's trying to maintain the aspect ratio of 3:2. So in order to customize these width and height numbers, you can just deselect that. So uncheck lock aspect ratio. Here you can either click and drag to the right or left, or you can just double click in there and change the number. But you can only change both numbers independently if you uncheck lock aspect ratio. Okay? Frame rate here, instead of 29.97, we're going to change that to 10 frames a second. And our duration down on the bottom, that's the only other number we're going to change. We're going to put 05. It's the second number, second set of zeros from the right is our seconds. 5 seconds, 0 frames is what we're showing there. Okay, so it's going to be 5 seconds here for our duration. Once you have all that set up, click OK. Now you can see your timeline, your scrub key here, and your play controls are no longer grayed out. So you can play it now along the timeline. And we're set up for 5 seconds, so that'll change, as you change the speed of your stop motion. So once we have this all set up, we close this here. Once we have this all set up, now what we want to do is import our photos or our photo sequence. So we do that by going up to File, Import, File again. And again, you go and find that folder. If you're not there, then you can go locate that folder on your computer. And so again, click on the first photo and then scroll down. And hold down Shift and then click on the last photo. Now, before you import this, make sure that where it says Import As, make sure that footage is there, which it is. That's your default. And make sure that you check Create Composition here on the bottom. So it has to be imported as footage, and then your import option, Create Composition, should be selected. Okay? And go ahead and just hit Import. Now here it's telling you what your still frames durations are for each frame. The default I've seen so far has been 2 seconds. That's fine. You can just leave that alone if you want. Okay, so now right here, what you want to do is make sure that Sequence Layers is checked and hit OK. And now you can see that all my raw clips are in the project window up in the upper left. Then on the bottom, they're also brought down to the timeline and they're already lined up for you. So After Effects takes care of a lot of the heavy lifting for you. So now it's rendering all the clips here, you can see, and then here's your playback controls under Preview. So if you play that back, you'll see again it's playing once again at a snail's pace. So let's change that. Now here's how we can change the speed and do it all at once. You see how the clips are already lined up one after the other. But how do we make this play faster so it looks more like it's happening in real time, right? Well, the answer is up here. We go up to Layer. Now, this is important. You might accidentally click off of your clips here. What you want to do down on the timeline is make sure all your clips are selected before you do this. So you click the first clip in the timeline, go all the way down to the bottom, hold down Shift, and click the last clip. Make sure those are all selected and highlighted. Then it'll do them all at once, okay? Now we go up to Layer, Time, and Time Stretch. Okay? Layer, Time Stretch, click that. Where it says Hold in Place, you're going to want to choose Current Frame. Make sure again your scrub key, your play key is at the beginning of your timeline, and then select Current Frame. Stretch factor, you're going to change from 100% to a lower number. Let's go 50% of the original speed, or 50% of the original length, I should say, of the movie. If we drop this video down to 50% of its original length, it's obviously going to have to play it faster, okay? So I changed my stretch factor to 50, and then watch what happens to my clips down here on the timeline. Notice they got shorter and they're still lining up with each other. That's because current frame was selected, okay? So now let's hit play again. And you can see here it's playing a little bit faster, but that's still not fast enough, right? So I'm going to hit Control Z to undo it. And I'm going to try it again. I'm going to go to Layer, Time Stretch. This time, make sure current frame is selected on the bottom. This time we're going to do, let's do 10%. Okay, I'm going to really go to the extreme here. So click 10% and notice here that the clips got much smaller. Here I can drag this slider on the bottom of the timeline to zoom in on it so you can see them better. But notice here now when I play it, it's going to play much faster. So that's much better. So I might go with that, maybe 10%. And notice there it changes the duration of my timeline to, let's see, we're getting to be about 9 seconds maybe. So that's pretty good. Now, looking at this, I noticed some of my clips in the end don't have my glasses, so I'm going to get rid of those. So to to make sure these are not all selected, just go in the timeline and click on any one of these clips. Like for this last one, for example, since I don't have my glasses, I'm going to select it here on the timeline here, and I'm going to hit delete. So I got rid of that frame. Now I'm going to drag my video slider over so I can see this clip. Notice there I don't have glasses, so I'm going to delete that clip. And all I'm doing is clicking on the actual layer and making sure it's selected and then just hitting the delete button. Okay, and this one I probably don't have any glasses, so I'm going to delete that. So here I'm making it shorter, of course, but at least I'll be able to make it look more consistent with all my glasses on. So again, just selecting all the clips that don't have glasses. And there's the last clip with glasses. So what I need to do is I need to loop back to the beginning where I'm looking at the book here. So what I'm going to do is just copy that first frame, the very first frame on top here. I'm going to select that, and then I'm going to just duplicate it, okay? And it's going to duplicate right next to the original. So I'm going to hit Control D, and notice there, just underneath it, I've duplicated the same clip. It's in the same position. When I turn the eyeball off on this top layer, notice that the layer beneath it, this one, is the same clip. Okay, so I've effectively duplicated this first clip. So what I'm going to do now is take this layer with the duplicated clip. I'm going to left click the mouse button, hold it down, and just drag it all the way down to the bottom of my screen and just keep kind of toggling it until I get to the very bottom. And there I'm on the bottom there now. And notice here I put that duplicate on the bottom down here. So it needs to be way over here, right, at about 7 or almost 8, about 8 seconds. So I'm going to grab this and just drag it all the way over to the end. And it should snap right in place there. So if I scrub over and look at it, there's no gap. So that looks pretty good. So that way when I play this, I'll end up where I started. And it should be a smooth, constant loop if I put this on repeat. Okay, and then I go back to the book. So I may not even need that last clip, but I'm going to try it. Okay, so that's basically how you set up your file. You know, you go up, you do a new file, new project. You set up a new composition. In this case, we did 640 by 480 dimensions. We did 10 frames a second. And we started with a 5-second animation. And here, I'm not sure what we're going to end up with time-wise, but it looks like we're finishing up with, oh, here it looks like I've got about an 8-minute or 8-second animation. So before I finish this, I want to make sure I'm using the right dimensions here. See where it says time navigator end? I'm going to drag that over to about the end of this movie. And then here on this one right here, this bar where the timeline is, that's your work area, and we want to drag that to the end of the clip too. So I'm going to drag this work area end about to the very last clip so I'm getting the duration right. Okay? So let me scroll down here and see where this ends. And this ends about almost 9 seconds. So I'm going to grab that slider, or right here, grab this bar, left click, and just drag it over to about 9, wherever the last frame is. And that's the area that we're going to render out. Okay? And that's your movie. That should play right there. And you can watch it to see if it looks good. And now to see if it loops well, you can do a loop here. Let's see, shortcut spacebar. Let's see if we can loop this thing. I don't know if that's a loop function there. Let's see if it loops. I don't think that worked. Yeah, so there you can see it looping. So there I'm just looping, and you can see how it should loop back to the beginning, essentially. And there's a little gap there. So what I may want to do is take that last frame and delete it, shorten this, and then watch it again without even having that last frame, so there isn't even a gap. Let's see how that goes. That's much better. So I didn't even need the last frame to loop it correctly. So okay, so once you have your video set the way you like it, you can spacebar to preview it. You can also go up here to the preview controls in the upper right. Click this little reset button here, and what that'll do is loop it for you. I notice there I have a lot of blank space there at the end. Okay, so that's a problem. So my video has become much longer with all this blank space here. There's 2 ways you can go about changing the length of your video now that it's too long. Here, if I scroll back to here I just went down to the very last frame here. The very last frame is at 7 seconds, 5 frames there, you can see. So maybe right there we'll end it at 7:05. So I can go up to composition on the top of the screen and choose composition settings, and I could just set that number right in here if I want. So 7 seconds, 5 frames, just like that. Hit OK. And notice there now the video ends right at that last frame there. So now when we watch it, as it goes toward the end, it's just going to go right back to the beginning. Okay, now it'll loop from without stopping or without having all that blank space. So perfect there. All right, the other way you could do it is just by dragging this bar right here. This is your work area bar. You can drag this anywhere you want to tell it where you want the video to end. We're just going to keep it there at 7:05. In fact, we could just do 7:06. So let's go up to composition settings. That might even be better. Let's add that 1 frame back. Click OK. And now when we watch it, well, there's a little blank space. You saw that. So we're going to go back to 7:05 here, I think. And so again, I can take this bar here and just drag that in maybe just a little bit. Right there. Perfect. All right, so now that you have that done, now we want to render this movie out. Easiest way to do that is to go up to File. Nope, sorry, wrong. The easiest way to do that would be to go up to Composition, choose Add to Render Queue. So again, Composition, Add to Render Queue. You're going to see this window on the bottom here. That's your render queue window. We're going to click on where it says Output Module Lossless. We're going to click the word Lossless. Format can be AVI or QuickTime.mov is fine too. Format options here, you can choose a video codec here. Let's just try Intel IUV codec. Let's try that Intel IYUV codec. Everything else is kind of preset for us. Click OK. We don't have to worry about audio because we don't have any here. So that's done there. Click OK. And then here where it says Output to, you're going to tell it where you're going to save it, and you're going to name it here. So 1, the proper naming system is the number, followed by a dash and your last name. And then just make sure AVI as the extension is underneath there. That's all you have to do. Okay, and now I'm going to tell this to save it to the desktop. It's going to be 1 dash my last name. In your case, it'll be your last name. Click Save. And then the last step is to click the render button there over to the right. Click Render. And notice there it's rendering out. Okay, now you're done. So now I can go over to find my movie on the desktop here. I can right click on it, choose Open With, and let's do VLC Media Player and see how this thing plays out. Yeah, and it just has a nice, just keeps looping back and forth. So that works out really nicely. And so that's basically how you render out your project and then get it into the format that you want before you email it to me.